The Premier League has become more competitive and unpredictable than ever, except when it comes to the relegation battle. In the past, we've witnessed newly promoted teams making strong pushes for the top half of the table, much like Ipswich under George Burley 2 decades ago, Reading in the 2006-07 season, and Leeds United as recently as 2020-21. However, the current landscape is troubling. All 3 promoted sides last season ended up relegated, and with history looking set to repeat itself this year, the gap between the Premier League and the Championship is starting to feel insurmountable. It remains to be seen whether the past 2 seasons are the new norm, but the divide has never been wider and could reach a point where Championship teams begin questioning whether promotion is even worth it for long-term success. While we've discussed whether the Big Six era is ending in another video, this second segment will explore whether surviving in the Premier League as a newly promoted side is still realistic. If Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton go down this season, which is looking increasingly likely, that would mean 10 of the last 15 promoted sides from the last 5 seasons have gone straight back down. It's a harsh reality for these clubs. Leicester and Southampton were once renowned for their recruitment and tactical approaches, reaching European football at their peak and enjoying lengthy spells in the Premier League, 9 and 11 seasons respectively, before suffering relegation in 2023. Bottom side Southampton are now 13 points from safety and are as good as relegated this late into the season. Perhaps they might have had a better chance of survival had they not stubbornly committed to such a high-risk passing style that consistently surrendered possession in dangerous areas. But in truth, they never looked anything like a Premier League-ready team. Ipswich, who are 8 points better off than Southampton, have had a slightly less dismal return to the Premier League. Players like Omari Hutchinson, Leif Davis, and especially Liam Delap have shown promise at the highest level and are likely headed for big summer moves. They've also rarely been outclassed but have drawn too many games where, with a sharper edge, they could have claimed all 3 points. Leicester perhaps have the best chance of staying up, as they appear more comfortable in possession than their relegation-threatened counterparts, but they still have been too far open under new manager Ruud van Nistelrooy. Even as they secured 4 points from his first 2 games in charge, it felt like they had benefited more from their opponents' missed chances. Across his first 6 matches in charge, the Foxes conceded a staggering 19.2 shots per game. And though they've tightened up since then, it has come at a cost, as they found the net just 3 times in their last 8 games. After their miraculous Premier League title win in 2016, they built a team capable of regularly competing among the elite, achieving successive 5th place finishes and an FA Cup win just 2 years before relegation. Now, after just 1 season out of the top flight, they can barely stack up against anyone. Further up the table, teams that were once in direct contention for relegation have bounced back and regained their stability, in turn leaving a grim outlook for the 3 clubs currently in the relegation zone. While it's true that none of the promoted teams in the 2022-23 season went down and all 3 continue to thrive, it's important to note that both Fulham and Bournemouth had recent experience in the Premier League. Nottingham Forest, on the other hand, had only returned after a 23-year absence from the top flight. But their aggressive spending on signings upon promotion, which later resulted in a 4-point deduction for breaching the league's profit and sustainability rules, has turned out to be a gamble worth taking. Now, under Nuno Espirito Santo, they are chasing a top 4 finish, and the wisdom of that spending spree is no longer in question. However, this trend of spending your way to safety is casting a shadow over English football. By the way, if you're enjoying the video so far, subscribe so that you don't miss out on our future videos. Newly promoted teams often struggle to survive in their first seasons back in the Premier League. This is nothing new. However, last season marked the first time since 1998, and only the second time ever, that all three promoted clubs were immediately relegated. To illustrate just how difficult it has been for Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton, consider last season's relegated trio as a reference point. Sheffield United, Burnley and Luton Town formed the weakest bottom three in Premier League history, garnering just 66 points between them, 10 points fewer than the next lowest on record. By contrast, Ipswich, Leicester and Southampton are on track to finish with a combined total of 63 points. Even accounting for Southampton's meager 9 points, which have somewhat skewed these figures and put them at risk of breaking Derby County's record low of 11 points, Ipswich and Leicester are still projected to finish the season with only 25 points each. When the Premier League was reduced from 22 to 20 teams in the 1996-97 season, the three promoted sides that year averaged 44.3 points. Last season, that average plummeted to just 22. These clubs might ponder why they can't replicate what Fulham and Bournemouth have achieved. That is, return to the top flight, survive, and then thrive. It seems that successful promotion hinges on playing front foot attacking football. However, once in the Premier League, teams often need to shift to a more defensive style. As such, survival often requires a complete change in strategy and personnel within a single season. And so far, a balanced approach between the two styles hasn't quite been universalized. Consequently, it's becoming increasingly easy for more established mid-table Premier League sides to stay up. Wolves illustrate this trend perfectly this season, as they are averaging well under a point per game but still have a comfortable cushion above the relegation zone. The financial landscape of the Premier League is also very revealing and highlights what promoted clubs are up against nowadays. According to Transfermarkt, Ipswich Town spent £106 million on new signings last summer, the 13th highest expenditure not in the Premier League but in world football. In short, Ipswich did what everyone says new clubs need to do to survive by spending over £100 million on their squad, and yet, it hasn't helped them close the gap. Next was Southampton with £99 million spent last summer, followed by Leicester's £73 million. Not a small figure, but still the 6th lowest in the Premier League. For those inclined to question why these figures haven't translated into a position higher up in the league table, the reality is that promoted teams face a daunting financial uphill battle that feels nearly impossible to win. This is especially true for Ipswich, who had been out of the top flight for 22 years, and given that they achieved back-to-back promotions and were competing in League One just 2 years ago, their situation is particularly unique. Realistically, this means that a single summer spending spree won't come close to bridging the gap in quality, squad depth, and wages, factors that have accumulated over time with mid-table clubs, let alone the Big Six. Perhaps the biggest concern from a competitive standpoint is that Forest's survival may suggest to other clubs that risking a points deduction for long-term benefit may not only be worth it, but a viable strategy. With the points tally required for survival decreasing each year, a points deduction may not even be as catastrophic as once thought. Look at Forest, who have since impressed and emerged as genuine Champions League contenders through smart signings and a strong commitment to their manager's playing style. However, the rise of these mid-table sides as Premier League stalwarts has led to a new phenomenon of clubs continually bouncing between divisions, seemingly too strong for the Championship yet not quite good enough for the Premier League. Between 2018 to 2022, for instance, Norwich City and Fulham never met in the league because they kept swapping places with each other. The latter's emergence as a mainstay could offer some hope. But with Sheffield United and Burnley, both relegated last season after struggling in the Premier League, looking poised for an immediate return, there are concerns that this cycle will only become more vicious. This creates a tier of clubs supported by parachute payments, which are provided to them over the 3 years following their relegation. For context, the 3 teams relegated to the Championship last season received £49 million each from the Premier League. In stark contrast, solidarity payments for the Championship clubs amounted to a little over 10% of that figure. For over a century, English football has been predicated on the concept of the pyramid, the idea that through diligence, application, and inspiration, teams can slowly rise and perhaps take their place among the elite. Therefore, that foundation is severely challenged if the distribution of financial resources is such that there are unbridgeable gulfs between divisions. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button and subscribe to the channel for more football news, stories, and insights. Also, don't forget to hit notifications so you never miss a beat. And with that, we'll see you in the next video.